Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Homeschool and Chill, the YouTube channel that seeks to alleviate your stress and anxiety about homeschooling. My name is Corinne, and today I want to talk a little bit about summer break and year-round homeschooling. Okay, so most of us are accustomed to the traditional school routine of school being open for 10 months of the year from August to about May, give or take, depending on your state, and then school being out for 2 months of the year, typically June and July. But for homeschoolers, you really get to choose your own schedule of when your school year begins, when it ends, how many days are in your school year, and when your breaks are going to be. And so many homeschool parents find themselves more comfortable with a year-round schedule. And so I'm one of those parents. We do year-round homeschooling. I prefer to do year-round homeschooling because it makes me feel a little more relaxed with when we choose to have breaks instead of planning out our breaks within a 10-month period and then having all this time out during the summer. I just decide to year-round homeschool, and then whenever we're just tired, whenever life events just happen, then we take those breaks. So we make the most of our time when we are energetic, when there's nothing going on, and then when unforeseen circumstances come up or we're just kind of burned out, then we can take those breaks when we actually need them. I also find year-round homeschooling beneficial because it helps me to kind of keep the girls what they've learned, kind of keep what the girls have learned in their mind. I think about 2 months of education is lost during summer break. I think that's what they say typically happens with children, that they lose 2 months worth of information that they've learned during a school year during their summer break. So I kind of enjoy year-round homeschooling because it keeps the girls from losing so much of the information. Now, I do try to plan the main portion of our school year from August to May. And the summer, I still teach my girls, but it's more so to brush up on the skills that they may have forgotten and doing a little bit of review on other things so that they don't forget. And then, something that we may not have touched on during the year, like the girls' special interests or certain life skills that I noticed that the girls need to work on. We like to spend that time doing that during the summer. So there's a lot of benefits to year-round homeschooling, just depending on what your family enjoys, what works best for your family. Some people probably wouldn't enjoy it and they like to have their entire summer to just do whatever they want, to go on vacations and to go traveling and have fun, and that's awesome too. We do actually take breaks when we want to go travel or whatever, but we don't need a whole 2 months necessarily to do that. But for other people, hey, if that's what your family needs, do what your family needs. But speaking of summer break and vacations and traveling, the coronavirus is, the whole pandemic and all of this stuff is going on still. Little by little, you're seeing different states where people are going back to their different phases of trying to get back to normal, but still pretty much there's a lot of social distancing that's going on. There's a lot of limits and restrictions on what we can and cannot do, and so our summer break is not what we're typically used to. So I want to spend some time talking to you about some things that you can do during this summer break to kind of somewhat still have fun with your kids, or some ideas of things that you can be doing when your curriculum has probably already ended, or if you're just new to homeschooling and you're like, okay, there's no more assignments from their teacher. What should I be doing during the summer when I'm just in the house with these kids? So I'm going to help you out with that. One of the activities that I've always admired and I've always wanted to do, and I've never actually done it myself, but I hear amazing things from other parents, and I always just wish that I would get my act together and do this with my girls. One thing that I want to do and that I want to recommend for you to do is to actually start gardening with your children. Now, I think typically you would have to start in the spring, so it's before your school year would actually end, depending on what you're growing, because different crops or different plants grow at different times. But you may have to start in early spring, mid-spring, and some things you might be okay to just start in the summer depending on what you're working on. But I do highly recommend that you start gardening with your children, whether you're growing vegetables, fruit, or just flowers or different plants. To do that with your children, because not only is it educational, but it is a skill that is necessary, especially when you look at what's going on right now and there's actually food shortages and different things like that. That was something that was kind of quickened in me, that maybe we need to start learning how to grow our own food, you know? Maybe people need to get back to, learning how to do those sort of things. But there is a lot that children can learn from just nature, learning about plant life cycles and learning how, what it takes for plants to grow. It's educational, it's hard work, it's exercise. Kids are out getting fresh air, and it's a bonding experience for your entire family. So I do highly recommend that you do some gardening with your children. And one day I will be able to get my act together and actually plant some garden of something with my children too. Now, depending on what exactly you choose, your children may not necessarily be as enthusiastic about this recommendation. However, if you are not hip to the online course game, then this is the perfect time for you to get your feet wet. If you've already been, kind of just doing your regular curriculum from your, I guess, a teacher, if your child is still in public school and you're homeschooling using the public school system, then you're kind of familiar with trying to do online classes. But right now, when the school year has ended, you may want to actually try having your child take some classes of something that they're interested in. Or if they do need some tutoring, then this is the perfect time for them to do that online. And there are plenty of resources out there. There's just different companies who do things like that. And then there's sites like Outschool, where there are teachers who are just from any field of work. They choose to create their own courses, and it's of their passion, their interest, their expertise, and they teach it to children. So, I mean, it's anything from just your basics like English or math all the way to like how to code for, all these different games that kids play, or just anything specific, books that your children are into, book clubs and different things like that. So this will be a perfect opportunity for your children to get involved in classes like that, or even online camps. I know my daughter, she was taking dance class, but when all of this happened, they started having their dance classes online through different Zoom meetings. And so there are things available like that where your children can take dance classes, they can take music classes, or anything online. Now, this is another piece of advice of something that I want to do and I have not yet tried. I have to actually try to find the sources of where I would go, what websites or whatever. But I have heard through the grapevine that different museums will have virtual tours. Like you can go online to their website, and a lot of them are having virtual tours, so that even though you may not necessarily be able to travel and go to museums or different places like that during the summer, you can go online and do a tour of their museum and get all of this wonderful information without having to go out and deal with other people and their germs and things like that while this pandemic is still trying to simmer down. So that's another thing that I recommend. I have not yet tried it, so I can't necessarily say as far as what the experience would be like, but I know at least it sounds interesting to me as far as an educational experience that can be extremely interesting too, depending on your kids. Some kids are just like, it's the summer and I'm not trying to learn about any other stuff, and I definitely don't want to sit here and pretend that I'm walking through a museum doing a virtual tour. But depending on your child, that might be an awesome experience, next to actually doing it in real life. So definitely check out some virtual tours of different museums in your area. This is something that I have already been trying to incorporate with my girls all the way throughout the year, and summer seems like the time when it's best to just do it even more. But I try to find, I guess, some of the nostalgic things that we used to do as children ourselves, things that we grew up with, and try to bring it to the next generation with new technology and how things change with each generation. There's some things that kind of get left behind and forgotten. And so sometimes change is good and sometimes change doesn't seem so good, but I am noticing that with each passing generation, you don't notice quite as many children outside or doing some of the fun things that we used to do that was just organic, wholesome fun. So the summertime, I think, is a really good time to just get your kids outside and do some old school type fun if your children are already hooked to technology, because it's kind of hard to separate them from the screens once they've already gotten hooked. Like, I understand, I try to do my best, but once you hand a kid a tablet, it's like you have signed yourself up to go to war to detach that child from the tablet. But if you are seeking to detach your child from the tablet and have them have some good old-fashioned, wholesome fun, then the summertime is the best time to do that. Get your kids outside with some sidewalk chalk get the baseballs out, get the bats, get the basketballs. And I mean, and this is a good chance for you to spend time with your children too, especially because they can't really interact with too many other children right now. Get out there and have fun with them. Go around your neighborhood riding bikes, shoot some hoops with your kids, throw the ball around the yard, play with the chalk, get the jump ropes out. And speaking of the chalk, go ahead and make that hopscotch out there and play hopscotch with your kids. All of those old fashioned things that we used to do back in the day, and we would just play for hours and hours and hours, and we didn't need television or tablets or internet or anything like that to keep us entertained. So try some of those old fashioned things. And speaking of old fashioned things, even though we have cell phones and we have the internet and social media and all these different things, it's a really good time during the summer to get your children involved in writing old school letters. Not only is that something educational, especially your small children, they're just starting to learn how to write letters, and that will be something that they're learning in an organic way rather than, you making up a fictitious person that they have to practice writing a letter to. Actually, go through the process of having your child write a letter to someone who's also cooped up in the house and bored and probably lonely too. So when I had my girls start writing letters, they started off writing to some of their friends who live out of state and even some who live right in state that they don't really see anymore because of this whole entire pandemic that's going on. And I also had them write letters to their grandma because well, not grandma, it's my grandma. So she's their great grandma. But my grandma, she lives by herself. And so already, being elderly and living alone, it can be kind of lonely. You're waiting for somebody to come and visit you, and she doesn't drive. So, she's at home most of the time until she just has to get a cab or get a relative to take her to the store. So, she's just kind of in the house. And then when this pandemic came, even more so, she's just at home. And so I thought, it's really important during these times to kind of look out for people who may live by themselves, who may be lonely, or just, those of us who are even with our families, we're getting kind of stir crazy. And it'll be nice to try to, reach out and send letters and have other forms of communication. And I don't care like how much different technology we have and ways of communicating. All of it's awesome, and I don't want to get rid of it. But there is something special about a handwritten note. So I think it's just special that someone takes the time with their hands to write something, and you can see their handwriting, you can kind of see how they feel on the paper. And so I think it's just another way of connecting with someone on another level outside of technology. So I just talked about how we're trying to get old school, so we're going to get back to the new school now of some things to do. Some of these things may seem obvious, and some of you may already be doing them, but one thing that you can be doing with your kids during the summer are some of these internet challenges, which might sound absolutely ridiculous to some of you. Some of you parents who just really aren't into the internet, or you're not really into social media because of the nonsense that's involved. But if you are involved with your children with some of these things, that's a bonding experience, and it also helps you to keep tabs on what's going on. Like, what are the trends? Why is this popular? Why is this trending? Why is this going viral? You're kind of still involved in your kids' world while you're doing something that they're interested in. Because I think that's a problem with us as adults. Sometimes we try to tell children, like, this is what you should be interested in. This is what you should be doing. And we don't spend enough time just trying to see what children are naturally into, what their peers are into. And that's important because kids will put on a front and do whatever they're supposed to do in front of us, but they have a completely different world, especially the older kids. They have a completely different world that they're living in, and there's different things that are considered cool or whatever. So get involved. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily say like you should go get on certain social media sites or different things like that. It's up to you to govern your family and keep them protected the way that you see fit. But if you are into doing things on social media, I do recommend, getting involved with your kids and, I don't know, doing some of these safe challenges, because some of them are just ridiculous and dangerous. But get involved and, do some of these dance challenges with your kids. Learn a little bit more about technology, because they know more than you do. Learn about some of this stuff and have some fun with your kids doing some of these fun challenges. I think that this whole lockdown or pandemic has really awakened the spirit of entrepreneurship in a lot of people, where they're realizing that if they take their gifts, their talents, their strengths, their goods, and they distribute it to the world and add a price tag to it, that is a form of income that they can rely on no matter what the circumstances are, that they can work from home and work for themselves. So I think the summertime right now, while your curriculum may have ended or your child's public school instruction at home has ended, this is a good time for you to explore with your child about what it's like to become a business owner, to start your own business. Now, I'm not trying to say to give yourself unrealistic goals to try to completely come up with a business from the ground up and get it up and running and making a bunch of money just during the summer. But I do think that it's a good time for you to study it. And that's one aspect of homeschooling that I think is really beautiful, is that you don't have to have all of the information up front and then just try to take what you know and implant it in your child's brain. But homeschooling is when you go alongside your child and you can actually learn things with them. So even if you don't know what it's like to start your own business, if you don't know all the ins and outs of being an entrepreneur, learn it with your child. Take some of these online courses, buy some books, sit there and study with your child and learn together. And who knows, by you just sitting there and learning together, this can turn into not only an educational experience, but this can become a livelihood for your family. And it can turn into generational wealth. Hello, generational wealth. Let's start learning to think beyond just getting food in our bellies or just keeping a roof over our head, and look forward to actually saving up money for the future. Not just the future like for a rainy day, but saving up for the future like leaving an inheritance to our children so that they don't have to start from the ground up. So those are my recommendations for some things that you can do with your children during the summer. Some of them were fun, some were educational, some were like prosperity, wealth building, setting up your family, like legacy type related things. That's the entrepreneurship. I'm excited about that. I want to do something, y'all. I don't know what yet, but I want to do something. But anyway, those are my recommendations. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, I hope that you love yourselves and stay healthy. Bye, loves.